Hello and welcome. You are watching UATV News with me, Ksenia Buhai. Let's start with the latest developments. Ukraine cannot be compared to Afghanistan in terms of United States support. This was stated by President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy in an interview with CNN. The head of state answered whether he was afraid that after the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan, the United States could also leave Ukraine alone. According to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, our country is not so much dependent on the United States like Afghanistan was, and we have been proving the ability to defend our state for 7 years already.
The Russian Federation is not a Taliban army, it is one of the most powerful armies in the world. Therefore, I believe that we have defended our state and we are as independent from any other country as possible. What does it mean to leave Ukraine? I believe that, on the contrary, the United States should increase its presence in Ukraine.
Ukraine is starting a new era in relations with the United States, and every meeting during the visit of the Ukrainian head of state to this country has brought the results. Ukrainian Ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova, spoke about this in an interview with the Ukrainian media. She said that, first of all, cooperation in the sphere of security and defense is going to intensify.
Ми підписали 3 важливих документи.
We've signed 3 important documents. Those are agreement on the strategic foundations of our defense partnership. It's in fact a plan of cooperation with the United States in all major areas for 5 years. We've signed an agreement on defense and technical cooperation, which is very important in the context of Ukroboronprom state defense concern and the development of our industry and mutual projects. Moreover, we have also signed a space deal. Release of all Ukrainians illegally held in prisons of Russia, temporarily occupied territories of Donbass and the occupied Crimea, ensure full operation of entry exit checkpoints along the contact line. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy expects concrete results from the summit of the Normandy Four at the level of leaders. Press Secretary of the Head of State, Serhiy Nikiforov, spoke about this on the air of our TV channel. Only Russia, among all the participants of the Normandy Four, has not yet confirmed its desire to negotiate.
I think that all other members of this Normandy format want it to be carried out not for the sake of meeting, but in order to achieve some concrete results, at least exchange of prisoners. So we are waiting. In this format, there is a constant contact between the parties. Some negotiations are continuing. We are waiting for some concrete agreements to be confirmed by the leaders of the Normandy Four with their presence at the highest level.
Independent human rights activists were again not allowed to visit Hassan and Aziz Akhtemov, illegally detained in the occupied Crimea. This was stated by lawyer Nikolai Polozov. Defenders hired by a family of political prisoners tried to see them. The Akhtemov brothers were detained in the occupied Crimea after illegal searches held between the 3rd and 4th of September. They are accused of allegedly damaging the gas pipeline in the village of Perevalne on August 23rd. The occupation authorities assigned their own lawyers to them. According to Rafat Chubarov, chairman of the Majlis of the Crimean Tatar people, in such a way the occupying authorities cover the tortures applied to the detainees.
Independent lawyers with whom relatives of Aziz and Hassan concluded the agreement were not admitted. There is also no news about the state of health of the Akhtemov brothers. The last thing I saw was the Friday at the FSB office. There the interrogation of Hassan took place. That day an ambulance doctor was called. As for further actions, of course, the lawyers will do everything possible to see the brothers.
Massive housing construction in the occupied Crimea and the great resettlement of the Russian nationals. For the 7 years of occupation, Russia has resettled over 1 million people to the Crimea. Meantime, 100,000 Ukrainian citizens, including native Crimean Tatars, had to leave the peninsula due to the threat of persecutions. Human rights activists state in such a way Kremlin is trying to forge a so-called native Russian territory and justify its claims.
1 million people in 7 years of occupation. Russia is forcing the native population to leave the peninsula under the threat of persecution. At the same time, it artificially populates the occupied peninsula with the Russian nationals.
В Евпатории, где я жила,
In Yevpatoria, where I used to live, there was a piece of coastal land not far from the city. They are now using it at full swing. They hand over land plots and assist the construction of housing. That is how they attract population from Russia. Moreover, one can observe changes in the ethnic composition with the naked eye. A huge number of people from the Caucasus, Siberian region, the Urals, all of them come to Crimea.
More than 100,000 Ukrainian citizens left Crimea since the beginning of occupation. 30% among them are Crimean Tatars. Kremlin seeks to create the new Russian shape of the Crimea by actively resettling residents.
This is not just a process of russification when the Russian-speaking population gets imported from occupying country. This is a full genocide process. By the internationally adopted definition, genocide implies not only murders and tortures and persecutions, but also forcible change to ethnic composition.
Moreover, the occupied Crimea serves as a military base for Russia. Tens of thousands of professional Russian military and intelligence officers have resettled to the peninsula as well.
There are several planned campaigns. Firstly, the military capabilities of the peninsula are increasing. This is why, obviously, new bases are emerging. I guess they have a plan to replace at least 30 or 40% of the population of Crimea in 10 years, so that there were at least million people undermining loyalty to Ukraine.
In the meantime, Moscow continues persecutions. The number of illegally arrested Ukrainians in Crimea exceeded 150 people.
As a result of the action of the occupation authorities, a significant part of active people was driven out of Crimea. Russia is pursuing a policy of expelling active citizens, primarily pro-Ukrainian, those who are generally engaged in self-organization and can oppose the authoritarian regime. Activists of the Crimean Tatars self-government bodies and Crimean Tatars activists.
Russia drives the assimilation of Crimea, hoping to justify the occupation. The process will continue to ramp up. Ukraine can break into this process through the help of international partners.
How long will this threat last? The longer Ukraine is on the line of a hybrid war, the stronger will be our relations with Ukraine, our solidarity with Ukraine. The stronger is the presence of the Ukrainian question in the minds of the European leaders, NATO leaders, which is extremely important. Poland is important in this context.
Russia will be held accountable for the occupation of Crimea, Deputy Foreign Minister of Ukraine Vasyl Bodnar says. International sanctions are the most effective mechanism for this.
Those sanctions introduced against the Russian Federation, they did not come from thin air. This is a punishment for crimes. And the Russian Federation has been committing crimes practically since its inception, because the conflicts that are now frozen, the conflict in Ukraine that is active, the hand goes to the same center.
Last week, the European Council extended personal restrictions against Russian entities and individuals accountable for the occupation of Crimea for another 6 months. Reported by Nick Starkov, Svetlana Sich, UATV News.
A bus with Ukrainian tourists had an accident in Turkey. The driver died. 35 passengers got injured. According to Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, there is no threat to their lives. In total, there were 41 Ukrainian citizens on the bus. According to preliminary data, the driver's heart attack was the cause of the accident. The bus lost control and collided with an oncoming school bus. 7 Turkish students were injured as well.
The Consulate of Ukraine in Antalya interacts with Turkish law enforcement officers to clarify all the circumstances of the accident, established contact with the tour operator and the insurance company that should cover the cost of treatment. The consul also plans to visit Ukrainians in hospital to provide them with consular assistance.
30 veterans of hostilities in the Donbass received certificates of successful completion of the cybersecurity course. It consisted of theoretical and practical courses. The military learned the basics of protecting information on the internet and also learned how to find themselves in the labor market. The goal of this program was not only training but also social adaptation of veterans. The course graduates say that it was challenging but useful and interesting.
When you come home, you still need to complete 4 laboratory works, read over some materials. Don't forget about the English language, because it is necessary to improve English skills. Therefore, there is a lot of interesting information. The one that captures. Those were tasks I wanted to solve, communicate, find some ways out and move further on. Realizing that a lot of people are returning from the east of Ukraine, are returning from the combat zone, and many of them cannot quite find themselves in a peaceful life. Sometimes people cannot always return to the front due to different objective reasons. We understood that we needed to create something that would be unique for people, for veterans and veterans who return and want to continue serving their country, but in peaceful life.
From now on, Ukrainians can submit a petition to local authorities, take part in a competition or implement a public project online thanks to a new service of Взаимодия electronic services that was launched within the DIA portal. Other options, such as the ability to participate in the public budget development and conduction of electronic service, are also provided, but they are still being developed. A public organization logs in the platform of electronic competitions and submits an electronic application form. It also receives confirmation from the organizers of the competition that it went well. After that, it makes its offer on the platform of online competitions. Birthday of one of the most famous Kyiv streets, the Andriyivsky Descent, was marked in the capital. In honor of the celebration, a street arts festival was held there. Guests were entertained with different workshops, excursions, and open-air theater performances. Our correspondent has also attended the celebration. Exhibitions, masterclasses and performances of musical groups, all types of street art are concentrated on the Andriyivsky Descent, Uruzwi's one of the oldest streets in Kyiv.
Happy holiday, everyone! Happy birthday, Andriyivsky!
The actors hope to get into the atmosphere of the holiday and plunge into the historical past of the street. Most wear costumes from the 19th and early 20th centuries.
I'm a little hot. The 19th century means a lot of layers of clothing, but they are quite comfortable.
Of course, ladies on rough terrain need some help from gentlemen to help keep them balanced.
The street got its name in the 18th century after the St. Andrew's Church. The outstanding personalities of Ukrainian history like Mikhail Bulgakov, Alexander Koshets and Grigor Tutunik lived there.
In fact, this is the most ancient street in Kyiv, the name of which we know was not always called Andriyivsky Descent. The first chronicles mention the Borichev ascent. Archaeologists, historians consider it to be the first known street, the road in Kyiv, which has received its own name. It is an ancient place in this city.
A musical excursion along the Andriyivsky Descent by the Lavrovutsky Kapella attracted special attention of people. With the help of various works of art, the musicians told the story of 9 memorable places of the street.
We did selected songs, thought upon them, searched the most suitable. Berezovsky and Bortnyansky sang the Baroque songs near the St. Andrew's Church. Then Shevchenko's verses, of course, near Kavaleridze Museum, because the monument to Shevchenko is there. Some new songs we chose for the theater in Podil.
Reported by Vadim Kramer and Yulia Bardish, UATV News.
That was our final story today. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter pages.